Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, March 27th, and it is time for another edition of Teal Talk. We are so glad that you are here. I apologize for our late start. We had a couple technical difficulties, which, as you know, never happens with any live interactions that you have. They always go perfectly smoothly. And today we are welcoming Don Jackson. I'm so excited that he's here. He is not only my friend, not only an amazing podcaster, he also has a pretty epic beard that I'm sure you can see from your screens. Hi, Don. Welcome to Teal Talk.
Hi, Jenny. How are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just hanging in there.
I like that artwork that's happening behind you. That's a good look. It's nice.
It's a personal piece.
Okay. You did that yourself? That's good that's not only a podcaster with an epic beard, but also artist extraordinaire. All right, Don. So Don owns the Raven Media Group. Tell me what the Raven Media Group is.
So the Raven Media Group is basically an outlet for brands, companies to get an online presence. So be it podcasting, be it blogging, video. What we like to do is do a 3D model of what you can do with your brand or your business. Don't just give them the audio reading material or the whole thing to amplify your reach.
Awesome. Yeah. And today, what we're going to do is talk about podcasting, because that is, I think, one of your specialties. And I've seen you at conferences around the country talking about that. So let's kind of do a little introduction today. How did you get into podcasting to begin with?
Well, I started a blog after my son was born, and I realized quite quickly I am a rubbish. And so from there, I decided I'm a way better talker than I am a typer. So I decided to start a podcast, and I started the Dad Spotlight with my co-host Christopher Lewis, and that once a week drop turned into 2 a week drops. So we have, I think, 140 or 160 episodes. I can't remember. It's been a while. We've been doing it for about 3 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's how I got.
Okay, and you're freezing a little bit, so I'm hoping this is going to stop soon. Okay, but you podcast for yourself, but you also kind of preach podcasting for all business and brand owners. So tell me a little bit about why that is so important. Why do you think it's such an essential factor to brand growth? Uh-oh, he's frozen. Hopefully he'll be back in just a second. Okay, I think he is totally frozen. Don, are you still there? Checking to see if anyone is seeing him. Okay, it looks like we have lost Don. Hi, everybody. I apologize so much for this. He went out for a second. Hopefully he'll come back in. As soon as we get him back in, we'll talk about this. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I switched. Hi. I switched because I noticed we were having an issue.
We were having an issue. Let me repeat the question.
Okay.
You were saying that you got so you started a blog when your son was born, and I believe it's called Daddy Newbie. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so Daddy Newbie is your blog. And then after that, you decided, because you did not enjoy the writing aspect as much, you decided to expand into podcasting, and you started Dad Spotlight. Okay. And then after that, you've kind of become an evangelist for podcasting all across the internet. And you go to conferences and you preach that it's an essential aspect of growing your brand and creating, as you were saying earlier, what Raven's all about, which is that three-dimensional brand. Tell me why you think podcasting is so important for blog owners.
Well, here's where we start spewing out numbers. And okay. I will start with this number.
Numbers are fascinating.
Yes, they are to almost only accountants. Or mathematicians.
Right.
So I will tell you this, there's 36 million people that commute daily in the United States. That commute time is usually between 26 to 28 minutes. So my thought process with everybody is this. Can you read when you're driving? Most likely not. Can you watch a video when you're driving? Most likely not, even though there are people that do all kinds of stuff while they're driving they're not supposed to. So you can't do any of those things safely. But what you can do is you can listen. So podcasting is like a passive way to get people to listen to your stuff, because let's say they can have it in the background while they're working. You can say a couple of keywords and it usually perk people up and go, well, I got to listen to this, And so that's different than video, because on video, you have to focus on what's going on. Like right now, you have to focus on this beer. You can't look away.
Mesmerizing.
So it is. In the skunk-like fashion that it is. And with podcasting, it's different because you have that captivating audience for that time. They can hear you and you're not taking anything away from them. So granted, you have to have those other two, but of the three, podcasting is the best way for you to get your information out there without being bothersome, without having them to do something extra. They can just put it in their ears, put it in the background, and just go about their business. So for us, that's why we focus on that.
Yeah, and I definitely think I'm seeing more and more people that's what they do when they're exercising. That's what they do when they're on planes. That's what they do. They download podcasting episodes for downtime because it's easy. All you have to have is your earbuds and your phone, and you're all set to go.
Yeah, or if you're like me and I don't read books, I just listen to them. So I'm that lazy. I'm just like, I can't even do that. Just
I can't be bothered. You need to talk to me. You need to speak it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So some people, if I'm a blogger and I have an established blog, let's say I've been blogging for 3 or 4 years and I already have a massive amount of content, but I'm going to start podcasting. Do I need to have a podcast? Do I need to write a blog post for every episode of my podcast? Do they have to go together in that way?
No. So 2 things here. So you already have a built-in audience. Your podcast can live on your website. It doesn't have to live anywhere else. It has to get, you have to upload it from somewhere. That's where you pay for a hosting site for there. But you don't have to pay for an additional website to house it. You can have it right there. You already have built-in content right there. So what you do with that content is just repurpose it. It's now a show idea. So you use that as your outline for a new episode. And then what's great about it is you have your show notes, which is now your podcast, which is now your blog post. You put your SEO in there, you put your links, 2 birds, 1 stone. And if you videotape, your podcast, then you have a visual element, an audio element, and a way for them to digest that information through reading. So 3 birds, 1 stone, because you can just rip the audio from your video and you're right there. So it's not really, it's a way for people to digest your content. It goes back to that conversation where, it's hard for some people to read on a bus. I mean, I get car sick if I'm reading, and so if I'm listening, I can the other great part about listening while you can be a creeper and just start looking at people and people watch. So there's that added element.
Many birds, 1 stone. Creeper.
Yeah.
Podcast listener, blogger, all the things that you need to be can be happening simultaneously.
This is most likely going to go viral. So you're welcome.
I think it's yes. I think it's probably already in progress. So I've decided I want to start a podcast. Give me podcasting 101. What are the first steps I should take?
Well, the first step, and usually what we do, because we teach people how to podcast. So what we do is we tell them, hey, it should be inception of idea till you drop your first episode. And we'll put a pin on that one and come back to that subject. But so beginning of idea to dropping your podcast should be about 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. You don't want to rush anything. Take your time, do the things you need to do. So the first thing you need to think of is, what am I doing this podcast for? Is it a driver to a product that I'm selling? Is it a driver to my website? Is it to make me sound like more a professional and get my name out there? You have to decide what that's going to be. So for me, I just like people to hear me, and I just want people to know who I am. I have 1 follower, but that's beside the point.
That one person is well-versed in you.
Yeah, it's a person I made up. But anyway,
okay. Perfect.
So what you want to do is decide on that idea. And it could be, and the other thing you do when you decide on what you're going to do with it and what the purpose of it is for, the second thing is, can I be passionate about this particular topic from inception of idea to episode 200? and you got to look at it like I need to be at episode 200 because there's a statistic out there that says most podcasts don't last past 7 episodes. That's kind of the magic number.
Really?
Yeah. And because a couple of things come into play here. One, everybody looks at their download numbers. And I tell every one of our clients, look at your download numbers only as a tool to help you figure out what's working. Not how many people are following, how many people listening. That's going to take care of itself eventually. If you have good content, they're going to come. It just takes time to be noticed because, not all of us are Dak Shepard. So we don't have already a built-in 1 million followers, so we're just Joe Guy down the street or Jill Girl down the street who are only known in our neighborhood with probably 5 people. So you're not going to get, a good number to look at, if you get 5,000 to 10,000 downloads per episode and you don't have really name recognition, that's outstanding. Even if you have 1,000 downloads, that's outstanding. So don't get caught up in looking at your download numbers. And that's what people do. And they get discouraged and they go, I'm not doing it. Nobody's listening to me. And that's when you're really actually just starting to hit your stride as far as finding your voice. And that's the other thing I would tell people, when you start, it's a weird thing to say, but you have to find your voice. When I first started podcasting, I was like, hello, my name is Don Jackson. How are you? I would like to talk about this topic. I love being at that. So I sounded like a dude from NPR, and that's not me. Right. But it took me a while to get comfortable. And usually by 7th episode, you're really comfortable and you're really starting to hit your stride. So be confident in your material, because here's the thing: your listeners are going to know your BS. They know you're not being serious with them and actually are excited about the topic. You can fake a lot of things. I've had a lot of girlfriends. I know this, but there's certain things you can't, and if you pay attention, you can't do that. So be genuine and make sure when you're picking that topic, you're going to be genuine. And then you just start the process. You start recording, you start practicing. The easiest way to get started podcasting and the hardest thing to do is hit record. Like I've had guests on, because I produce a lot of podcasts, and when we get a guest on, usually I'll get on. Jenny, you've been on this on end of a couple of my conversations with how to be a guest on a show. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, everybody thinks that as soon as you hit record, you're live and you can't take anything back. But some podcasts I'm on is heavily edited. Yeah. So if you mess up, I always tell everybody, if you mess up, who cares? Just tell me, hey, Don, cut that. I want to start over. And guess what? We can start over. And so that's what you can do. Don't get caught up in thinking I have to be perfect the whole entire way, because that's the magic of editing. You can fix anything that happens. So, yeah.
Unlike right now, where if you mess up, it's out there and you're kind of just screwed. So sorry about that.
We've started this messed up, and it's just
right. It was messed up from the beginning, and it's just continuous tanking. Okay. So Tara Jacobson asked, what are the topics of the shows that Don thinks do the best?
I love this. Is my favorite thing. And it's always, it depends on your audience, because you've built this podcast for your audience. So what works for me necessarily isn't going to work for somebody else. So your audience. So if you look at your download numbers, and let's say you're working on underwater basket weaving, that's your topic, and you have the world's greatest basket weaver, but then your next guest is the greatest underwater basket weaver, and that one gets your most downloads. So you go about what that topic actually. So in it was talking about how to eat Raisin Brans while you're, putting a basket together. And for some reason, for some reason, people got that.
It resonated.
And it goes back to when people tell me, well, what's the perfect podcast length? Again, it goes to two things here, whatever your audience thinks they can do. And the second thing is however long it takes you to get your message across of what you're trying to accomplish from that episode. There is 3-minute podcasts out there. There's a guy that has an 8-hour podcast. That dude gets, I think it's like 12,000 downloads. I'm like, wow. Are you kidding me? I can't even sleep for 8 hours, let alone listen to a podcast for 8 hours. But he has 12,000 people that listen to him religiously.
Does he talk steadily for 8 hours?
Yeah. I've never listened to it because, I don't want to give away 8 hours of my life. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
It's boring most days, but I think I can do something other than listen to a dude talk for 8 hours. But that's his audience. That's what his audience expects. That's what they're looking for. So topics and time and length of your podcast has everything to do with what your audience is. And you're an extension of that audience. So when you have a guest and you're a host, you're asking the questions that you think your audience wants you to ask.
Right.
And you're an extension of them. So, yeah. So it depends on what you're doing, I guess would be the thing. And what
lawyer answer. You gave a lawyer answer. It depends. Yeah.
I worked with Jamie this morning, so.
Oh, she's rubbing off.
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie Hanick-Lieberman, who has been a guest frequently on Teal Talk. If anyone has any more questions for Donner, please feel free to post them in the comments. I'm going to keep going though. So let's talk about podcast structure. I think that kind of is a natural extension of Tara Jacobson's question about what topics. So if you decide on a topic, and it's a lot of the people, I think a lot of our listeners they already have a sense of what that topic is or what that audience is, because they already have a brand that they're working to promote. So what are the most successful structures of podcasts, and what types of podcasts fit best where?
Again, this goes back to you and your message and your voice.
Right.
So, like how we like to, like if we're working with a company or a brand, this is what we call a basic structure, where you have the intro of the episode, which is voiceover music with you introducing your podcast. And then you have an interview or your intro to the interview.
Right.
And then you're going to have a bumper. We're going to put a pin in that bumper real quick. I'm going to come right back to it. So after that, then you go to your main interview. This is if you're doing an interview style or even a monologue style. Then you have another bumper that leads to your outro, where you talk about the takeaways from the episode. Okay. And you kind of tease what's coming up. And then you go to your voiceover outro with the music and giving them a call to action. You also want to give them a call to action again, depending on what you're trying to do with the podcast. It could be, hey, go to our Facebook group page and let's talk about this topic that we have. When I go peanut butter, you go blank.
Jelly.
Yeah. So whatever you want to put with it. Yeah. So, and then you can have them banter back and forth. So sometimes you want to have that, especially if you have a Facebook group, you want to make it, you don't want to make it too serious. You want to go, so tell me what you think of the Mueller report. You don't want anything like that. You want something really simple, sweet, but it has something to do kind of with the topic. Like Jamie and them's last episode, it was, I think they're working on basically exposure, online exposure, what do you do with that stuff? So your question would be, what was your biggest fear when you put yourself out there? What would you think was going to happen? And I think for a lot of people, what's great about podcasting, and the other thing I forgot to mention why I like it, is because it shows the human part of you. So you can interact with these people. The greatest story I could ever tell anybody is the 1960 presidential election debate between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy. Mm-hmm. This is the first time it was a debate was ever broadcast on TV.
Right.
People that watched the broadcast thought Kennedy just whooped Nixon, because Nixon was sweating. He had a lot of makeup on, and he just looked fidgety. And of course, Kennedy just looked, dude was hot. So, right. I mean, come on. So, but people that listened to the debate thought it was the other way around. They thought Nixon had great answers. They thought he had the issues covered, and Kennedy didn't. And so it all goes about perspective. So, I think it's important that when you do all that stuff, you remember it. So let's talk about those two bumpers that we put in there. Mm-hmm. Those two bumpers are later on going to be these are like Pavlov's dogs, because later on they're going to be ads. But you've already, since you first start out, you're most likely not going to have ads.
Right.
If you do have a service, you're going to want to put your services there right away. But if you don't, let's say you're just doing exposure for you as an expert, then you want to, you want to monetize your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two areas right there automatically that's built in that you could put in there, and one's first. So the first bumper is going to be your premium one. You're going to go, hey, listen, all my listeners are right here. They're going to go right into it. You're center stage right there. So the second one, you charge a little bit less, but that's where you put that's where you get added value for your podcast, and you can actually start paying for it. So to answer your question, there's thousands of styles out there you can do. That's just a basic one that we do and we recommend to our clients, but you can also play off that. I mean, I have one client that starts out with bloopers of the actual podcast episode they had. So it's just like 45 seconds of one, laugh after another one, what do I say after I return from a break? And then I'll come on and go, welcome back. I mean, it's stuff like that, that's on there. And then we have other clients that, like, my podcast starts out with Chris's daughters or my son saying, Dad, Spotlight episode. My son's 8 now. So when we first started, he was in the 4 to 5 range. So the voice sounded really cute. Yeah. Now he's becoming olderish now. So the voice is less cute-ish, right, but it's still there. So it can be anything you want it to be, I guess, is the answer.
But you definitely want to build in those spots where you can monetize later. And we're going to talk a little bit more about monetization in a bit. But definitely looking forward and establishing, is it important to establish that structure from the beginning? Do you see people that bounce around a lot with structures, or is it something that you want to give a very clear, like people talk about publishing content on expected days, like you want to give the audience an idea of what they're going to, what they can expect and what they're going to get?
I think some people are turned off by, like if you're like a blogger, if a sponsored post, some of their followers don't really care for those. So if you establish right away, day one, that, hey, guess what? There's going to be, and so here's the best part about creating those bumpers or those ads later on. You create them at 15-second intervals. So it's either 15 seconds, 30, 45, or 60 seconds. The reason why that is, almost every podcast player out there has a 15-second skip. So if they don't want to listen to it, they just hit the skip button for 15 seconds. They hear the commercial still going, hit it for another 15 seconds. If it's done at 30, then they're good. So each time they know it's not going to be more than 60 seconds. And then you do it that way. That's if it's an established, what we call a cold advertise, which means the hot one would be if you're reading it. Let's say my episode today is brought to you by, Sherman Oaks, and at Sherman Oaks, we make pies with oats, and they're delicious. And you're reading what they're actually saying, and so you can't really skip that because then you don't know how long it's going to be.
Right.
So we encourage people to do that, but don't have it very long. And then if you're going to do a long one, go ahead and put it where that bumper is. Have it more established so they can do it. And your listeners have a choice. Then they can choose to listen to it or not listen to it. People love choices. And so when you force them into stuff, they're like going to be like, you're not my boss. You're not my supervisor. You can't tell me what to do. And that might turn people off. And so, but again, it goes to, you understand your listeners, because if you already have a blog, you already understand what they're coming to expect. Right. So if they know you do a lot of sponsored content, stuff like that, they know your podcast is most likely going to have some ads, and it might be helpful to them. And what you can do too is you can include a link to that particular company or sponsor in your show notes, and they can do it there. And then some people develop a kind of like what your company does, and you can get stuff that way as well. So it's, it depends on how you want to do it, but there's a lot of ways to monetize your podcast without being too in your face about it.
Too salesy.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that you have to have some equipment to podcast. Like, you can't just wake up in the morning and decide, I'm going to podcast today, and here is my computer, I'm going to talk at it, and then I will have a podcast. So, but I also know that it's become an industry to where podcasting, there's all the gear and all these websites and all this really expensive stuff that you can drop several $1,000s on. And I was kind of wondering, I wanted you to give us a little bit of insight on what is essential. What do I have to go? And what are the frilly, like I start to be a little bit successful, I'll spend money on this. How do you see that scaling out?
So if you're, what I always recommend when people want to try to start the podcast is do it on the cheap in areas you can do it on the cheap. So spend money where you should spend money. Don't spend money where you don't need to. If you're going to have just a interview style where it's you and somebody else, all you need is your laptop. And the best advice I gave you is spend money on a good microphone. That doesn't mean spend a lot of money on a good microphone. Like I have in my home studio, I have a Hi-L P40, and that's a $600 mic. It's a very expensive mic. Best mic that we recommend for people is the ATR Audio-Technica ATR 2100. That microphone is about, I think right now on Amazon you get it for like $61. So yeah, see that awesome thing right there. What's great about that microphone is it's two things. It's an XLR mic and it's a USB mic, which means that USB goes in the bottom of your mic and goes right into your laptop. That microphone sound quality is just a slightly less than the Hi-L. So you don't have to spend that much money to have that type of microphone. And then the other thing you want to do is have a pair of headphones that don't have a mic attached to it. You want to plug that into your bottom of your ATR. And that's also going to be for when you edit. I can tell you that I can teach, and we do at my company, we teach people how to edit, produce, put out a whole podcast together. Editing is just time consuming. So for every half-hour episode, you're going to want to add an hour to it. So if I have a half-hour episode, it should take me an hour and a half just to get rid of the uhs and ahs. Because when you're listening to it, you're cutting it. So you're listening to the episode, but you have to go back to see if it works. Now, if you're doing production and editing at the same time, go ahead and add another half hour onto that because you're cutting everything as you go. So that's 2 hours. If you are a product-based business, 2 hours of your time takes away from you selling for 2 hours. So you have to decide, do I spend the money there? And for anybody can do it. Production is a little bit different. Production's kind of an art. Production is when I put the whole podcast together. So that's from introduction, to outro music and everything. So I'll listen to a thing, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that the expert that you have on actually sounds like an expert on there, because again, people get, they get flustered and they sometimes give you War and Peace like I'm giving right now instead of the Cliff Notes version. And what you want to do is you want to, compact that a little bit. So if I'm doing production on it, I hear that they started really strong at the beginning of this 12-hour, synopsis.
Dissertation on.
Yeah. And in the middle, they stunk a little bit. It wasn't that great. So, but at the end, they closed it really strong.
You pulled it back around.
Yeah. So you go, I don't need this, I don't need that. But if you're good at production, if you're a good podcast productionist, then you don't have to write anything down. I heard that there, and I know I got to cut here. And I know the things I've got to cut to bring everything together. That takes time to do that. Yeah. Some people can never do that, but it gets to where you understand the flow of the conversation. It should be a good flow from beginning to end. So just to start a podcast, if you're just going to do it on your own and you want to do all that stuff yourself, I would say be prepared. That's counting hosting for your podcast. Be prepared to spend about $250. You don't. Okay. When I first started, I was listening to all the big people out there. I'd name names, but that would be mean and hurtful and everything else. But I spent, $1,600. That was just on the equipment because I said I need this big mixer and I need this and I need that. And before you knew it, everything added up to like this. And I didn't realize at the time that their information that they were sending me also had their links to it. So they were getting a cut of that. So that's why they wanted me to spend the big stuff. Yeah. So for me, when I talk to people, I tell them, listen, there's more than enough people out there that need the work I have. So the equipment I tell you to use isn't because I'm getting a kickback from it. It's because I really believe in the equipment. And I don't think you have to spend thousands of dollars, even $1,000 to start a podcast. You can start a podcast for $250 with that equipment, that I just mentioned. And that's it, because we recommend people use Audacity. It's an editing software. It's free, simply because it's pretty simple and you don't need to get really technical. There's all kinds of software out there that help you edit. That's if you have PC. If you're unfortunate and have an Apple product, then it already comes with GarageBand. Mm-hmm.
Burn.
It already comes with GarageBand. Yeah. And so it's already built in. You can use GarageBand there. And then you can record, you can record just off Skype if you want to. There's a couple of programs out there. Ecamm is for PC. You can record Skype or GoToMeeting. You can record Call Note is one that we use and we recommend. And those are about a one-time purchase, I think, of about $20, $30. So it's not horribly bad. And that's about it. I mean, podcasting isn't rocket science. It's, you don't have to be super smart to do it. It's just time consuming with a lot of stuff and a little overwhelming at times. So it's just, if you can get past that part, then you're good to go.
Do you think, so outsourcing in terms of how much is too much to pay? Do you go out and look for an editor initially, or do you try to muddle through on your own? Like you said, for the 2 hours that you could be spending editing your podcast, you could also be spending selling. Do you think, and what do you normally pay for a service like that?
So let me preface this by saying that's already when you have all of your shortcuts, the 2 hours that I just told you to put all that together. Because the first time you put your podcast together, you got to create shortcuts. You got to create your intro outro shortcuts with your music and everything else. And then you got to create those. Then you got to put them all together. So your first actual episode should probably take you between 3.5, 4 hours with everything that you got to put in there. And there's plenty of sites out there that will offer the services for editing and producing. If you want a good producer and if you want a good sound engineer, you're looking at between $75 and $125 per hour. I mean, they're just, but I can tell you that there's a difference between them and, how about this? There's probably cheaper lawyers out there than Jamie, but there isn't better lawyers out there. So you get what you pay for. Jamie's an outstanding lawyer. So she has a premium rate. And if you want a premium attorney, then you pay that premium rate. So you can do all of this stuff yourself. And you can also send it to Fiverr. I know I'm going to get shot by a lot of my peers because they will do it for like $5. But they're just most of the time getting rid of the uhs and ahs. They're not actually doing production. You can also have people that just churn out, stuff and they do like that. The only problem with that is I tell them, listen, if they don't understand your voice, then they're going to cut it how they think it should be cut, which means they're going to cut things they shouldn't be cutting because it's not really in line with what you want to do. They go, that didn't make sense. Well, if you have somebody that you work with and understands what you're doing and they know what you're trying to do, you don't have to get on constant emails going, I didn't want that cut. Can you redo that? So again, you could pay $5. I've seen it on Fiverr. You can get your podcast edited for $5.
Wow.
But you usually get it kicked back because, you're going, I didn't like this. I didn't like that. Why did you cut that? And then, so the time that you spent for the back and forth, even though it started out at $5, you're already up at $75. And you're going, how did I get here? It's because of the back and forth. So I can tell you that there's people that are cheaper than others. But if you do your job well and you do it right, and then it saves you time and you don't have to have the back and forth, to me, I can make more money. I can't make more time. So if I'm going to waste anything, I'm going to probably go towards spending a little bit more money than actually having to waste my time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So how do you talked a lot about intro and outro. How do you get those? Where do you get those? Do you just listen to music that you like, or do you Is there a special outro store that I can go frequent?
So there's plenty of sites that I can tell you a story where a person who they were making six figures with their podcast.
Wow.
But they didn't get royalty-free music. And so they used somebody else's music, and that person sued them. And now that person makes six figures with that person's podcast, just off the residuals of what they did before. So there's plenty of sites out there that you can pay, depending on how often you're going to use it. Like the one we use, like I tell clients to go find their actual music from, if they're just going to pick an outro music for, I'll tell them to use Shutterstock. Shutterstock, it's $50 for one song. And then once you pay for it, that's it. That's yours. You can use it at, the whole length of the song and 20 different, aspects of it. So what we tell people is, pick a good intro of it, and then we'll cut that, and then we'll cut a different one for your outro, and then we'll cut a different one for your bumpers. And then there's other ones that are like $20 a month where it's unlimited. You can just pull those off there. So it depends, but be prepared to pay at least $50 for, let me take that back. Pay $50 for royalty-free, music. Don't cheap out on that, because once you cheap out and something you've built, you're going to lose. And then you're going to need somebody like Jamie.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a lot more than $50. So
yeah, pay the 50
that
now.
whole thing is going to cost. Yeah. It just makes more sense. So, yeah.
So where do I publish my podcast? Is iTunes enough? Do I need to put it online in more places?
So remember we talked about it has to have its own hosting site. So there's Listbin, SoundCloud. I don't recommend SoundCloud. There's Podbean. What we recommend to everybody is Blueberry. What's great about Blueberry is, and this actually works on any of them, but with Blueberry, you can they made a PowerPress plugin, a WordPress plugin. It's called PowerPress. You put that on your website. It's drag, drop, publish. That's it. So it creates its own RSS feed. So that RSS feed is separate from your website RSS feed. So once you establish that, and when you're going to drop your episodes, you need to drop 4 episodes, 3 to 4 episodes, because here's the magic. The magic number is this. It does 2 things. One, if you're dropping twice a month, or once a month even, if you drop 1 episode and people have to wait a whole month to hear you again, that's not a great start. So you want to drop 3 to 4 for that reason. The other reason is you can't apply to iTunes until you've had 3 to 4 episodes. So if you drop 4 at one time, you can apply to iTunes right away. It usually takes, they say 24 to 48 hours. It usually takes like 6 to 10. The longest it's ever happened actually was recently with a podcast that just came back because we had to reestablish the podcast. Oh. But it took a good 24 hours. But that's the only time I've ever had that happen. But it's just one of those deals. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay, and so that you actually took my next question out. So you said you need to have 4 episodes before you launch.
3 to 4, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And that's just right from the beginning, all edited, all ready to go. So now that I have these 3 to 4 episodes, how do I promote?
So promoting is something we started introducing our clients to, is what we call an audiogram. An audiogram is something that is a 45 to 60 second preview of what the show is going to be about. And what's great about that is they can either share it on any of their social channels, because you develop a template that allows them to share it on every channel, because each channel has different specifications. And that's a good way to do it, because they can actually listen to it. You can put some stuff behind it, make it funny. Go check out the Fearless podcast. They do that. It's really cool. One of my clients, sorry, by the way. And what they do is they promote it that way. And what you can do that way too is, if you have a guest, you want to make it as easy as possible for your guest to share what they've just been on. And they want to share it, by the way, because they want people to hear them. So you just make it really simple. If you send them that audiogram, it's again, copy, paste, you're good. And they put it in their social channels. The other thing is too, if you don't do it that way, then just create a pretty link with it and just say, hey, copy, paste this and send it out there, please. And just share it in your social channels. So you just promote it that way and just keep promoting it. So if I'm going to, if I'm going to promote an episode, then a week before the episode, I'll put one of those audiograms before the episode to get people excited about what's coming up. So I'll post it on our social channels. If the guest is going to be on there, I'll ask if they can promote it on their social channels. And that gives them something to look forward to. And what we'll do is we'll cut something that really speaks to the episode, to the topic of what you're trying to get through. And so it's no different than a movie preview. It gets people excited about what's coming. And that's the best way to do it. And then what's great about it too, especially when you create those audiograms and those pretty links, is those old episodes for like me. I mean, I have, you know, for my podcast, I have 140 plus episodes. So I want people to go back and listen to some of my episodes. So this is where our download numbers come into play, because then we can go back and say, this episode did really well. So let's put that out there. Let's give people a reason to go listen to us. So if they like that episode, maybe they're going to like one of the other 40 billion episodes we have. And so you give them a reason to go back. So even though it's an old episode, doesn't mean you don't go back and use it. If it was good for a reason, put it back into play.
So how do you promote your podcast when it doesn't match the content of your blog?
You don't put that podcast on that blog post.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's counterproductive. So basically what you're doing is just putting something on there, like, you know, somebody who's, you know, wearing jellies and they're wearing a winter parka, you know, jellies and that just going to go. So did I just say that right? Jellies?
You did. It is jellies. Okay. It is. It's like a vegan podcast talking about carnivorous habits of like grilling. Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah. So basically, if that's the case, don't have it on there. You'll have to create something totally different for it. But again, remember what we said at the beginning. If you already have established content and you already have an established blog, you have a built-in audience. You're just giving them a different way to consume your information. So, and people want choices. You know, when you go to the convenience store, have you seen the bank of sodas that they have? I mean, when I used to go in there, it was 3. It was diet, regular, and regular.
That's when dinosaurs were walking the earth too.
That's why there's so much gray in this bad boy. Yeah. So, I mean, you want to give them a reason or give them a different outlet for them to consume your information and to promote your brand or your product or whatever you're trying to. Again, remember when we talked about at the beginning, we had talked about what that podcast is going to do. Is it a funnel or is it to make you an expert? What is the purpose of it? And so that goes back to it.
Awesome. Okay. So what programs do you recommend if you're doing a podcast with a partner? First off, let's just talk about resources. If I want to go out and learn, where do I need to go? Learn about best websites, best software, best, like my little podcasting toolkit. What do I want to put in it?
So if you're going to start a podcast, I would tell people just go and listen to different podcasts out there to get an idea of what you want your format and how you want it to look like. As far as resources go, there's tons of them out there. I mean, just put in, but be careful. It goes back to when I started. You have to be careful about who, you know, I can tell you already know the price for what it should cost you to start a podcast. So if you see somebody that's charging 1,000 or 500 or whatever, you know, they're just doing it because they're trying to make money. And so there's things you can do out there. I think we have it on the site. We have, it's $25 you buy a checklist of everything to start your podcast. So it's an in-depth look on a checklist of what things you need to start a podcast. And it's pretty in-depth. But there's plenty of those out there like that. Just buyer beware with some of it. And then again, it goes back to, when you start your podcast, you have to understand what you want it to sound like. So, and it needs to be unique to your specific, to your brand, to your voice. And I always tell clients, go give me a list of podcasts that you really like, and we'll try to tailor your podcast around that. And we'll cherry pick what we think is going to work, and you can tell us what doesn't work. And I think at the end of the day, when everybody keeps asking the questions of what's the magical number for this, there's no magical number, only the ones that work for you. And I don't know what those are most of the time. I can give you a general idea of what works with some clients. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, people say, what should it sound like? It should sound like you. Your tribe, your people, your followers, they know what you sound like. And it should just be an extension of that to promote you as a brand or you as a company or your product. Whatever it is, that's what it should be. So to answer your question, coming back around, which I don't think I really answered, but there's plenty of resources out there. Just remember that key number I gave you, $250. You can start a podcast for $250. So if you go to a site that has information on there and they start rattling off these numbers, like you need a mixer and you need a soundboard and you need that, and you're like, no, refresh and go back to another one.
So how do you grow a following? How do you get more listeners?
So besides the simple
keep producing content.
Yeah, keep producing content. Keep producing good content. So it goes back to that microphone thing I told you about in the beginning. Pay a little bit for a good microphone, because if you can have golden content, but you sound like crap, nobody wants to listen to you. True. So you could have a great microphone and still have crappy content, then that's a different issue. So just get guests that go in line with what you're trying to promote, and then try to get be on other podcasts that are like-minded like yours, and have them be on yours, and you guys can share, because something's going to click differently with somebody else. So promote your podcast by being on other podcasts, and then just keep doing the things we talked about at the beginning of, putting your old links up there of old shows that actually had good content. Go to Facebook group pages. There's plenty of podcast groups out there that you can share your content on, but there's also Facebook that you can share your content on. Ask your friends to share it, do a lot of social media with it. But if you can get on a different podcast, that'll really help you promote your podcast and get your name out there. And then every once in a while, try to get a super big guest, that's in your genre, of your niche that you're in, to help you kind of get a boost. Sometimes those guys or gals are really good at helping you blast out your content, and some of them aren't so great. So it goes back to making it as easy as possible to share that episode with them. So if you can copy paste and they can post it on their social media, there's very few people that say, no, I'm not going to do that. The people that say, no, I'm not going to do that are, jerks anyway. So who cares?
Not our favorite people.
Yeah.
So monetization, let's quickly go over that. We've all heard the struggles on monetizing a podcast. Where do you start looking for sponsors? How do you pitch them? Is it just as simple as just basic pitching with a blog, that you're going out and reaching for the brands that you like, that you find are good, are simpatico with your brand, or is there more to it than that?
Well, it's that, but also you got to remember, it's not your download numbers. You're not selling your download numbers, because it's more than that. So it's your whole entire reach. That includes your social channels, that includes groups that you have. All of that should feed into your reach. So when they say, well, how many downloads you get? Well, you say, well, I have this many downloads. And if you first start, that's not going to sound that impressive. Well, I had 60 downloads at last episode, so there's that. And they're going to go, that's awesome. I don't know why we're talking, but okay. So then you go, but the reach of that episode was, 10,000 views, or whatever that could be. And then you go, and then they go, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Now we're having a conversation. because you can't just put it on your actual downloads, because here's a little secret about download numbers. Apple doesn't release any download numbers. Google, if you get it off there, they only give you partial download numbers. So a lot of the download numbers you're getting aren't the whole picture, because that's, not everybody's, most people are probably listening to them on iTunes. I get my podcasts from Podcast Addict. So they pull everybody's RSS feeds to go into there, and that's where I get my podcast from. But they give me my download numbers. And so your host will give you download numbers. They only give you the download numbers that they get back from whoever they're pulling it from. So if iTunes is pulling it and they ask for iTunes, and then iTunes is like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not going to give you that. So it's different. And then a lot of people, when they first started doing ads for podcasts, try to do it like it does for radio. Well, it doesn't work because radio's live and the numbers don't equate right. So it's one of those things where don't just go in there and say, these are my download numbers, but you just talk to people that are going to fit into what you're trying to do. So if you're a vegan podcast, you're not going to go to Snake River Farms and go, hey, you guys want to promote on our podcast? They're going to go, no. And you're going to get a huge no, because they're like, nobody that listens to your podcast is going to buy any of this. Right. So, so you want to go to like Whole Foods and go, Whole Foods, you have this section, blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about doing that? And then try to lock people into, when you go into it, go, let's do a 4-episode arc, or it could be a 3-month arc. And then give them something for it. Again, it comes back to that premium spots that we're talking about, that premium spot where your first ad or bumper is going to be a premium spot. So they should pay a little bit more, and then make it, where, hey, listen, we're going to show you on our social channels. We're going to show you here, because that's where it comes back to that reach, where they go, we're not just going to promote you on our podcast. We're going to promote you everywhere we have something. Yep. And so that helps there.
Do you have any kind of ideas on pricing? I mean, it all depends on reach. It all depends on multiple things, but any sort of shot in the dark of how people can price podcast advertising?
It all depends. I mean, I can tell you, I have a client that was trying to get on Mike Rowe's podcast, and they wanted to sell an ad on his podcast. Okay. It's $25,000 per episode.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a 4-month minimum for them. Yeah. So we're not Mike Rowe. We don't get 500,000 downloads per episode. So if you can try to get, what I always tell people is, take a look at your cost. How much do you pay for hosting your website and then add a little bit more for what you think your time is into it. And then take that as your baseline. So when you go in, I need this amount. So let's say it's you started out with $250, say $500, say $500 an episode, okay. Go in there and say that, or go $250 an episode, but go in there and don't go. It's kind of like people that do sponsored content. Don't go in there going, oh, you're going to pay me $25? Yeah, I'll take that. No.
Sure. No. Toilet paper for 3 days? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You're going to send me what? Okay.
Amazing.
And you just got to be strong with it and go, no, this is the price I want, because this is what, and you break it down to how much it's going to cost you. And that should be your lowest price. And then that's when you start negotiating. You go, you're settled for $250, but you go $500 an episode. And then you start negotiating. But your bottom cutoff line is $250. So we go below $250, I'm out. And that's what you have to do. You have to believe in your product, just like you have to believe in yourself. And if you don't, then you're not going to get crap. You're going to get crapped on, but you're not going to get what you actually deserve, which is the time and money that you put into it. So don't go thinking, after I drop my 4th episode, I'm going to go try to get a sponsor. Right. You could try it. It'll be probably sad, but the people that you already have established relationships with sponsored content should be your first call. They should be the first person you reach out because they've already worked with you and go, hey, listen, I don't know if you know this, but this is what I'm doing. And I will throw this other number out. It was 1.6 billion. $1.6 billion was made in ad revenue in podcasting last year.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's really a misnomer that people are talking about you can't monetize. You can.
Yeah. It's just what people are doing is they're trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you can't reinvent the wheel. You actually have to go in there. And for people who already have established companies that they worked with or stuff like that, they're silly not to put that forward because they already have a foot in the door. Right.
Absolutely. You already got a relationship. Mm-hmm. All right. We are out of time, but I'm going to have you talk to me a little bit about where we can find you and what services you offer with Raven Media.
So you can find me on all the social channels. Just go look up the Raven Media Group. I think we're pretty much, the first you have to put there because the other one's a Raven Media Group and I think they're in Boston and they do wildlife stuff. And that's totally not me. Yeah. Yeah. No. So you can find me at the Raven Media Group at any of those channels, be it Twitter, Instagram, the Facebook.
The Book of Faces.
Yeah. And you can hear me on some of the podcasts that I produce. So I know some of your people have actually, I think you and Amber have both been on one of my clients' podcasts. So that's pretty cool. I don't want to promote them because, I'm just kidding. The Fearless podcast, they're awesome. Fearless Business podcast. And they're great. And then as far as my services go, we do everything that helps people get a podcast going. So we have a package where we teach people how to do from inception of idea to your first 4 episodes, and we teach you every aspect of how to get a podcast going. We do a la carte stuff. We also do video, and we help people with show notes, all that good stuff. So we try to cross the whole gambit of what we're trying to do here. We do it really well. I have a great team. I'm probably the weakest link on that team. I'm just kidding. But we do good work. And so please, check us out. And I had a lot of fun today, by the way.
I had a lot of fun too. We had a little bump, but that's okay. We hit our stride. And the other awesome thing is that Don is actually going to be speaking at the Mediavine conference in Chicago. We're going to have him there as a special guest.
I will be. And I got my velour suit ready. It's going to be awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. Make an impression. It's only one chance to do it. And you're ready to do it with a velour suit.
And then a shirt just buttoned all the way down. Maybe navel height. Yeah, you're welcome.
I knew we were gonna get inappropriate at some point, and I'm glad we saved it to the very end. So thank you so much, Don, for being here. Guys, thank you for joining us. Again, you can find Don at the Raven Media Group. We are happy to have you here for another Teal Talk, and we will see you in April because it's almost April, guys. Have a wonderful end of March, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Don.
Thank you.